welcome back. This is the first time we've had an episode in a while, so you have to drink. I don't have to drink because I'm making it. I mean, you're not doing anything. How come you didn't make me an episode of Title Pending, huh? Anyways, for today's cold opening, we're going to do my top 5 favorite amiibo. Number 5 is Link. Number 4 is Wolf. Link. Number 3 is Link. Number 2 is Ganondorf. And number 1 is Link. If you didn't see that coming, you have to drink. Welcome back to $0 Production Show, Title Pending. Haven't had an episode in a few weeks, so I think it's time to drink. Today's beer of the week is Narwhal from Sierra Nevada, which is the most impressive thing I've had from them. Like, not that anything I've had from them is bad, but this is like really, really good Imperial Stout. So I would absolutely go ahead and buy 2 of these. They come in 4-packs, so 2 means 8. And just have a night. You deserve it. As far as I know. And if you don't deserve it, then, I mean, you're paying for it anyway, right? You deserve it at least enough to spend your own money on something stupid. Now that I've blabbed long enough to pour this beer, I was really just stalling, so we have to drink. We can go ahead and drink again because I picked such a good beer. Now to the point of today's show. This game comes out in 2 days from the time that I am recording this. So by the time you watch it, it might already be out. I'm not totally sure. If it is out where you are, then drink because you are watching my video instead of playing Zelda. What is wrong with you? That's just ridiculous. I'll drink 2. Anyway, because Zelda comes out in 2 days, I decided this would be a good day to do a top 5 Zelda games. And actually, I've been thinking of doing this for a while, and it took quite a long time for me to put together this list because I wanted to do a top 5 best Zelda games, and not my personal favorite, because I have a lot of trouble picking favorites anyways. So this is the top 5 best Legend of Zelda games to date, with the exception of Breath of the Wild, because obviously it comes out in 2 days. I can't really review it. So this is all done from an objective viewpoint. I gave every game a score out of 40. They had 10 points in 4 different categories: graphics, sound, gameplay, and story. And so that's a total of 40 points. And that's how I rated them, and I rated every single Zelda game, and it actually took me a lot of time and thought into this list, which is weird for me, because usually I just sit down for like an hour and just like write like nonsense. Anyways, number 5 best Zelda game to date is The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. The 3D version, actually, I rated sort of. I kind of thought about rating them separately because this is a totally different game from the original, but I did end up rating them together as one because I think they end up about even. There's some things in the remake that I really like, and there's some things in the remake that I think were pointless and just made the game unnecessarily easy. But Majora's Mask overall, I gave a 36 out of 40. Graphically, it was basically the same as Ocarina of Time, which was perfectly fine, except for with minor upgrades, because basically the reason that it came to be was that Nintendo was like, hey, Team Zelda guys, go make us a game that's uses this fancy new expansion pack for the Nintendo 64 and has better graphics. And I think Miyamoto was just gonna make Ocarina of Time Plus or something. Yeah, I don't know what they would have called it, but it would have been basically better graphics Ocarina of Time, which I don't honestly think most fans would mind, but it was actually Aonuma that was like, why don't we just make a whole new game? And so they reused a bunch of assets from Ocarina of Time and made a whole new game. And it did get a couple of points chipped away from that, because there was a handful of weird inconsistencies with the reused assets, which I guess, given the time constraint, is actually very impressive that they made such a significant, you know, game that impacted the series in such a way as it did. It's a cult favorite to this day. You know, everybody at least regards it as being pretty good, even if they don't like it. I also rated it down because the 3D system in the original version was really just annoying. It it worked and it had a purpose, but it was really annoying, especially the fact that you couldn't save anywhere. And that was one thing I would give to the 3D version, is you can at least save at save points and have like hard save points instead of having to go back in time every time you want to save anywhere, unless you want just that quick save from the owl statue. So that was a really nice upgrade that I think was absolutely necessary to drive that game forward. The best thing about this game, though, was its story. Its storylines in Zelda games are often just not amazing, and honestly, this is no exception. The primary storyline was pretty simple, straightforward, and it was fun, but, I mean, who cares? But the story in this, I actually gave a lot of extra points because of the depth of character found in the side quests. Like, every side quest that is on a major scale in this game, you have to go do specific things with specific people in specific places at specific times in the 3-day cycle, which is what I like about the 3-day cycle. It really, just designing a 3-day cycle of what people do for their lives in this 3 days was a stunning achievement in character presentation. Every character in the world had a purpose for being there. It felt like they actually felt like people that were in this crazy doomed world, and that was really awesome. Number 4 best game in the Zelda series is The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, which I have a cool guide for, which has a... I recently got into guide collecting, and I'm kind of impressed at how much, like, random art there is in guides. Like, I had no idea. Like, I've never hardly used guides because I always felt like it was cheating, but now I'm like, it's kind of just like an art book, so what's wrong with that? The Wind Waker, for me, is on this list because it is the game that made the timeline matter. Before the Wind Waker, like, there was probably some timeline theories out there, but I could not name one, personally, and I think that's a little crazy, especially with how timeline theories are now. Like, now you can, like, look up just Breath of the Wild timeline theories, and you will find hundreds, probably thousands of links on Google or YouTube or wherever you're going to search for this. You can find just a ton of different theories, and they all come from people with different ideas of how that could work. And when Wind Waker was first coming out, it was like, when it first came out, you had a lot of references to Ocarina of Time specifically, and not a lot of other games. And that, I think, is what got people thinking, what if all of these games are in the same theoretical world, in the same theoretical timeline? How would that work? And without this game, I don't think anybody would care about timeline theories, because very few games, even made after Wind Waker, really reference each other directly, with obvious exceptions being, you know, Spirit Tracks references Phantom Hourglass a little bit, being a direct sequel, more or less direct. You know, it's a while in the future with a different link and whatever. Or is it? I've forgotten, so drink. But anyways, short of direct sequels, there's very little reference to any other game in this series, even after this game was out. So this is largely the basis upon which every timeline theory before Hyrule Historia was published got all of its details. Because no game before Wind Waker said anything about any other game, except for direct sequels, and no game after it has done nearly as much as Wind Waker. Like Twilight Princess, now we know that the hero's shade is Link, okay? But it wasn't even directly said in the game, so that's kind of hard to tell at that point. Anyways, Wind Waker is great. My cat interrupted recording, so drink. So, I'm kidding. I just want to drink this beer. It's so good. Number 3, best Legend of Zelda game of all time is for Game Boy, and I've talked about it a lot before. The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. This is also, I got the deluxe version. That's the only version I've ever played. Like, I've never even seen a regular version. I'm not sure it exists. I think it's a folk myth. This game and the next game, number 2, actually both scored 38 out of 40. So I had to a little bit pick favorites, and I'll tell you why I picked the other one as number 2 over this one when we get to it. Because personally, this might be my favorite Zelda game. It's definitely my favorite handheld game, and it's a really hard call. It's just such a great game for so many reasons. Like, everybody, I think it's funny, everybody says Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess have dark storylines. You need to go back and play this game, man. This is like crazy how dark this is when you really think about it. Spoiler warning, I'm gonna sell the whole game out. So basically what you find out over the course of the game is that this world that you've crash landed on, basically, it's a little island called Koholint, and you find out that every person and every creature on this island is a figment of the imagination of a magical creature called the Windfish. Holy crap. So, how do you escape is by waking up the Windfish, but this figment of imagination is not a regular kind of a figment of imagination, it's his dream. So if you wake him up, the dream ends and all of it disappears forever. Which, if you're thinking about that, you're like, okay, so basically, Link is tasked with the choice, do I, A, go back to Hyrule and save Hyrule, because inevitably they will need a hero eventually, or do I stay here and be with his people as their guardian? You know, because they're constantly under attack as well, possibly not as big threats. You know, they never get killed by anything as big as, you know, Ganon, but still. But the worst part is that if he leaves, he's basically murdering every person on Koholint that he has interacted with. That's just screwed up, man. This is awesome! Oh my god, it's such good writing. And, like, I don't even think anybody will ever realize just how good of writing this is. You know, because that character development with Link is not really there. He doesn't actually emote. I think if they remade this game like A Link Between Worlds kind of did for A Link to the Past or something like that, or even if they just did a whole reimagining in 3D and HD graphics and everything, I think that people would just appreciate the story so much more to see Link's dilemma actually percolating within him. You know, do I destroy this world and return to my own, or do I let my own fall to the hands of Ganon? That's basically the task he's given. What do you even do? You don't do anything. Nobody ever wins. Number 2, best Zelda game of all time, as I said, was tied with the last one, and the only reason I gave this number 2 spot and the other one number 3 spot is actually because I think it did more for the series and more for gaming than any other Zelda game, except for number one. Now, this game may surprise you because, as I've said a lot of times, I think this game is the best game of all time, but after objectively reviewing it, I have changed my opinion. This game is the number 2 best game of all time, and it is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. That's right, I think something is better than Ocarina of Time from an objective viewpoint. Now, I like Ocarina of Time. That is the only point of contention that I would have with Link's Awakening being the best spot. If it wasn't for those two, I would be easily able to pick a favorite one or the other. But Ocarina of Time was just great. Like, I will still play my GameCube version of it. I don't have an N64 anymore, but the GameCube version of it is literally a direct port. There's no upgraded graphics or anything, to the best of my knowledge. It's the same game. If I had the N64 version, I would still play that. But, like, even looking at it now, the graphics look okay. Like, they look dated, but you still know what everything is. It's perfectly clear. It's stylized the way it is. You know, it looks pretty decent. Even going back to it, almost 20 years after the fact, this game still looks amazing, and it looks even more amazing in 3D, by the way. If you haven't played this version of this game on a new 3DS XL, then you are missing out on the best experience of that, in my opinion, because it just looks so fantastic, and with the face tracking 3D, like, I just get lost in that game so easily. I get lost in the regular version on the Nintendo 64 and GameCube. But anyways, I knocked very little off of this. The only two things that I downgraded at a point from perfect for was in the sound department. I think the regular battle theme gets kind of boring after a while. Even on your first playthrough, you're like, oh, it's a battle theme. It's not a bad battle theme. It's a well-composed battle theme. It sounds like there's a battle going on, but it's very repetitive, and it's only like a 16 bars of music that's looped, I think. Maybe 32 bars. It's very short, and it's just looped infinitely. So that gets a little boring. And the only other thing I knocked off is gameplay. Most of the enemies are kind of designed the same. You know, you stun them, and then you hit them with whatever item you found in the dungeon. Which, there's nothing wrong with that. But it was done before, I think. And it feels a little like a little bit of a cop-out kind of design. Although I've said a lot before about a game that sets a cliche, and this kind of set that cliche for a lot of series. But I would still argue that this is not the game that set that cliche. The game that created all the cliches that Ocarina of Time is attributed with the creation of is the number 1 best Zelda game of all time. And it is Drink, because I unfortunately am unable to find my copy of it, and I feel like a bad Zelda fan because of that. I can't find my copy. But in all seriousness, but the number 1 best Zelda game of all time is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. It came out before Ocarina of Time, and basically everything that everybody says Ocarina of Time did for gaming, A Link to the Past did it first. The only thing that Ocarina of Time did for gaming that A Link to the Past didn't do was put it in 3D. And they honestly, Ocarina of Time had a fantastic method of putting it in 3D, because a lot of experimental 3D games at the time were a little awkward and clunky, and you didn't know, because you only had one joystick at a time at any given game, so you couldn't really control the camera freely of yourself, And so the locking mechanism really just worked. Mechanic is the word I should have said, so we can go ahead and drink. But the locking mechanic really, really worked in Ocarina of Time, and that's what made that game work in 3D. But other than that, everything that it did for gaming, A Link to the Past did first. It really, A Link to the Past set up the formula for what is a Zelda game, and then every game after that was built off of the same formula as A Link to the Past. Blank villain is doing blank evil thing. Okay, that was even established beforehand. And go through dungeons in order, explore intermittently in between, find cool items, find an item in every dungeon, use it to defeat the boss at the end of the dungeon, leave. But even though it established that cliche order, I would argue that A Link to the Past even did it better than Ocarina of Time, after I'm thinking about it, because there was a lot more like weird hidden items all over the place, and I feel like Ocarina of Time really had a little bit of a, this is the dungeon you got this item in, this is the dungeon where you use this item, and most items were forgotten about after the dungeon in which you obtained them. So that kind of sucked. A Link to the Past, you know, it's like you get to Ganon's Tower and you need like every item, and not just for a little sectioned off part of Ganon's Tower, but like through the whole tower. That's another thing that I really love in A Link to the Past, is the dungeons are not linear, like at all. That's something that I would knock off most Zelda games for, is linear dungeons. You know, there's a handful of mostly old games, mostly top-down games, where the dungeons, you'll have to go up 2 floors and then down 3 and then up 5 and then all over the place through this crazy labyrinthine dungeon. And at the end of it, like, you won't even know how you got to the end of it. You'll just be like, what did I just do? I've been wandering around in here for hours, and now I'm at the boss door, except the boss key must be in the last chest that I didn't get, which the compass says is 5 floors back. How do I even get to 5 floors back? I came into this floor through a teleporter that goes 2 floors back, which has a staircase that goes up. It doesn't work. And it's just that level of exploration in nonlinear dungeons far outclasses any linear dungeon design that any game has ever done. And in A Link to the Past, I would argue that they are the best because they are the biggest non-linear dungeons, at least in the last several. Because Ganon's Tower, I'm pretty sure, had 16 floors or 32 floors. I think it was 8 floors and 8 basements for a total of 16, which is just nuts. No other dungeon has ever come close to being that big, as far as just number of floors. And each of the floors was like a big map. Like, you could put like 3 water temples from Ocarina of Time in Ganon's Tower. So screw you, Ocarina of Time. I'm kidding, don't screw you, you're amazing. But the best Zelda game of all time is A Link to the Past. Sorry. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, then please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Because if you don't share it, then nobody else will see it, and then nobody else will be able to tell me I'm wrong. Because if you'd like to tell me I'm wrong, then you can. Or if you'd like to tell me I'm right, then you can. Or if you'd like to tell me that I'm an idiot who really should stop babbling about this kind of stuff, then you can. Anyway, be sure to check us out next week when we may possibly be starting a new podcast. I'll be bringing in a guest. So that'll be pretty fun. Look out for that and other future $0 productions, upcoming shenanigans. Bye.